Hey guys, welcome back to the Unlearn podcast. Today I'm very lucky to have a past client, Francie, with me. Francie's going to share some of her journey through chronic fatigue and doing the lightning process with me. She's since gone on to do some amazing things, and she is the founder of Flourish and Free, and she does coaching herself, which is amazing. She has come so far, and her journey is very inspirational. So I know that many of you will take something from our conversation today. So welcome, Francie. Nice to have you here. So we'll kick off. We'll start just to recap. For those of you who aren't so familiar with the lightning process, like I have mentioned it a few times already on these podcasts, but the lightning process training is something that I teach. So it's a 3 half-day training. It is a brain retraining program, and it's all about the mind-body connection. So I work with clients that are really stuck with any physical health symptoms, such as fatigue and pain, long COVID, IBS. Honestly, there's so many different things, skin issues, reproductive issues. And then I'm also working a lot with people that are really stuck with more mental symptoms, mental and emotional symptoms. So anxiety, depression, OCD. So it's a training that really benefits a whole lot of different symptoms and conditions. So Francie, she was a client back in, what did we say it was? April 2022.
2022.
Yeah. So a year and a half ago now. And Francie will soon tell us all about her diagnosis and her health journey, but she came with symptoms of chronic fatigue. So Francie, because people listening, some people will be familiar with what chronic fatigue is, others won't be. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what was going on for you with your symptoms when you were stuck with your health? So what did that look like for you, and what is chronic fatigue?
I don't know if I can give you a medical diagnosis of what fatigue is, but I'll talk to you a little bit of my experience and how I ended up with the diagnosis of chronic fatigue. So I think it's probably useful to start with maybe 3 years before I came to see you. I also had glandular fever. Mm-hmm. So that was fine. I was someone who had glandular fever. I recovered once, but then I had it again. I was one of those people that, normally people get glange at uni. I didn't.
Yeah.
I had one boyfriend at the time. It was like, how the hell did this happen? But anyway, I had glange.
Yeah.
And then about a year later, I used to have these really funny symptoms. So I used to wake up in the middle of the night sweating a lot, or wake up in the morning sweating. And then I got really, really thirsty. And so that kind of led me to, oh my gosh, do I have diabetes? I did some tests with the doctor. I then ended up with an endocrinologist and a general specialist, and no, you don't have diabetes. Symptoms kind of keep persisting.
So the endocrinologist, that for anyone who doesn't know, that's people that deal with hormones, right? Specialists that deal with hormones.
Yeah. And diabetes is a hormone thing. So I didn't have that, but I was then getting tinnitus, which is the ringing in the ears, and was starting to wake up quite tired in the morning. Went back to my endocrinologist and doctor, and they found my cortisol was actually really high, and this was a really surprising thing. That was because I was on the pill, and I came off the pill. And that went down. They're like, cool, you'll get better. You're off the pill. I didn't get better, and I started to get worse with my fatigue, that I'd go along every 2 months. And then something I'd get really busy, and then I'd crash for 2 weeks. And a crash for me was I couldn't go to work. I was too tired. I was too fatigued. And this kind of carried on with my doctor, my GP, and endocrinologist. Did a whole lot of tests we can't find anything that's wrong with you. And then just probably about 5 months before I came to see you, did a big 3-day overnight tramp, and I had my sister's wedding. And then I went into a 6-week crash, and I just couldn't recover. And I kind of just pushed my doctor and endocrinologist, what is wrong with me?
Mm-hmm.
And they were like, well, we're kind of out of options.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have cancer. You don't have diabetes. There's nothing wrong with you. Oh, well, you must have chronic fatigue.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a very typical way of, as far as, what I've been told. I didn't have chronic fatigue myself, but it's a very typical way of getting diagnosed because chronic fatigue is such an umbrella term. And there are so many different symptoms that fall within that chronic fatigue syndrome or diagnosis. So, of course, most people will have that ongoing fatigue. And like me and you both know that people who have chronic fatigue, it's not just tiredness. Like some people listening might be like, oh, she was just tired. But when you're experiencing these crashes and this fatigue, this is like a full body fatigue. Like you said, were you working? Did you say you weren't working at that point?
No, I was wrapping up a job and starting a new job. But I had to go on, finishing my job, I had to go on sick leave for 4 weeks. I just remember, waking up in the morning about 10 o'clock, I'd be awake for an hour.
Yeah.
And then I would go back to bed to sleep all afternoon and wake up. But then it's just such a weird fatigue. You just never feel rested, no matter how much sleep you get. And I just, even walking 200 meters was just exhausting. And then I'd come out of these big crashes, but then I couldn't walk more than 2K without having to have a break. And I had in a past life been a high performance athlete, and
it's very
you.
Absolutely. And I really I'm asking these questions because you are my first client on, obviously, but I really want to highlight how dysregulated, how sick we can be and how much of a mind-body approach can help, because this is not unusual. I'm seeing clients that are off work, that are off uni, that can't get out of bed. So it's a very, I guess when we look back, it can be a very traumatic experience because it does truly impact every part of your life, especially if this is an ongoing thing over a long period of time. And you kind of talked about how you went to a specialist and they didn't really they did their kind of they cleared everything and they ruled things out, but they didn't have any answers. And how did that feel in itself, just to get no answers?
It's so frustrating when you don't get answers, because the endocrinologist I had at the time, or the specialist, he had been the specialists of hospitals in Auckland, the senior specialist. Yeah, I'm dealing with a really good specialist, and he don't have answers. And you're like, what is wrong with me? And I think that's the frustrating thing, is you think something is wrong. You can't just go to the doctor and take something or have an injection and get better. And then you go into the spiral of, is this going to be my life? You hear stories of people with chronic fatigue of they had to stop working forever. They have to go on the benefit. They can't live the life. And I was like, oh my gosh, is this me? Is this it?
Well, you've kind of taken me into my next question, because the next question is, how did you get to the point? Sounds like it was a few months between months, I guess it was 6 months.
Yeah, it was a few months.
And then seeking some help. But when and how did you get to the point of being open to a mind-body approach, and specifically, the lightning process? Because something that I can kind of come against, I would say I come against it, but it can be a little bit of a thing, a block, is number one, the name, because the lightning process, it doesn't really, I guess, explain fully what we do on the training. And secondly, if you're dealing with these physical symptoms, knowing that you're going to a training where there's no sort of physical touch, there's no physical approach, you're not given any medication. How did you get to this point mentally, or did people share stories with you so you got to a point where you were open to looking into this way of approaching your health?
I'm so glad you've asked me this question, because I then use this a lot to talk to other people who I have met with chronic illness and being like, you don't have to be stuck forever. There is hope. Let me tell you about it. So when I kind of got this chronic fatigue diagnosis, I went back to my GP, and I have an amazing GP. I'm so lucky to have her. And she said, look, there's a specialist in New Zealand who does chronic fatigue. Oh, by the way, she's retired, so there's no one in New Zealand who actually is a specialist.
Amazing.
And you're like, right, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
And she was like, let's try vitamin B injections. We tried vitamin B injections, and at the same time, I joined Facebook groups with all this chronic fatigue. And that was just the most depressing thing ever. And I must have gone back to my doctor and was like, vitamin B aren't working. Like, what are we going to do? And she said to me, hey, if you have the resources, I've heard really good things about this lightning process, which looks at the mind-body connection. And I was like, okay, well, I feel like
if the doctor said
running out of options, my doctor's really credible. And then I was talking to one of my best friends. I was like, hey, so this is what happened. And I got recommended the lightning process. And she's like, oh my gosh, I know someone else who had chronic fatigue, who was also in Christchurch, same age as me, who did the lightning process. And I was like, okay. So I got in touch with her, and she told me how it had completely transformed her relationship with fatigue. And she'd got her life back. And I was like, okay, I can do this. And then I went on the lightning process website and started to listen to some of the recordings from Phil Parker. Yeah. And then probably what was the icing on the cake was maybe just before I signed up with you, we got engaged and we were away on Golden Bay, and I was just not normal me. Like, we'd go for a walk or something, and I'd have to sit down. Like at a half an hour walk, I'd get 15 minutes in and I'd have to sit down. My fiance at the time would go kayaking and stuff, and I'd go home and have a nap. Just not me. I just couldn't do life.
Yeah.
But then we got engaged, and I suddenly got all this energy, and I was like, oh my gosh, is that because something's gone really well? I'm suddenly feeling really positive.
Yeah.
And then I think that was really like my belief that this is going to work for me.
Well, that might have been that moment when you realized, hey, my state, or a state that I can be in of excitement or happiness, that is doing something, and it's giving me a boost. And that's awesome. I do remember when you filled out your application form and I spoke to you, and it was like, obviously a bittersweet time because you were dealing with a lot, but you had a lot of positive things going on as well. Absolutely. Like, I'm so glad that your doctor recommended it, because it helps so much when we have this, you're going through a medical channel, I guess. It really gives brain retraining and nervous system based approaches some credibility. So that's awesome. So, I just want to circle back to that support group thing. That is one place I do recommend if anyone is listening and they are struggling with chronic illness. All I would say is just be really mindful of what groups you're joining and where you're putting your energy, because I know these groups on Facebook and things, they can make us feel like we are part of a community, and they can be really beneficial, especially if they have good ideas about different approaches to get well and make change. But like Francie said, often they are full of really limiting beliefs, and just, the people that do get well, they don't tend to need to be on those support groups. So we really want to be putting ourselves in places and spaces where people are thriving and they have the results that we want, essentially. So yeah, thanks for bringing that up. So you get to the point, you sign up to the lightning process training. We do the training. You were with another amazing client. I loved our group. We had such a nice little group going on.
We had the best time, and both of us walked away from that, I just think, full of so much optimism. We, for so long we'd had both doing different symptoms, both of us. Yeah. We walked away from it, and the coolest thing too is you walk away with a buddy to continue to do this with, because it's brain retraining. You've got to take your brain to the gym.
Yeah.
And it's like when you go to the gym, having a buddy is just so much better because you can't be bothered getting up in the morning. And when you've got a buddy, it's just so good. So I loved that training.
Community is important, and that's something I'm really looking to foster more of now that I'm in this space where I've got the sort of energy to do that. So I think having people keep us accountable is so important. So you come to the 3-day training. Now, like I said, people listening that aren't as familiar, it's 3 half days. We work, I was working with Francie in person, and I was taking her and another client through the slideshow. We were talking about a whole lot of different stuff around the mind-body connection, around our nervous system. And each day I teach my clients these sets of tools that they can start to use repetitively to change the brain. So these tools consist of visualization, changing our self-talk, looking at our language, looking at the way that we breathe and our posture, the way that we become aware of thoughts and patterns, unconscious autopilot patterns that are keeping our mind and our body stuck. So I know for a lot of people, it sounds really vague and a little bit woo-woo, but it's 100% not, is it, Francie? Like, it's not woo-woo at all. It's so neuroscience-based. I can't even tell you how much science there is to all of this. So, Francie, how would you describe your experience with the training? And, yeah, what were some positive things you got out of it?
It's so funny hearing you talk about that. It kind of reminded me, put myself back in a position of, I was listening to this and hearing you explain, visualization and self-talk. You think, how on earth is this going to work? And I think that's such a natural response to have. But what I can say is and I said this to my doctor, it was better than getting engaged. Like, I got my health back.
Big statement.
And we are married, and it's not like it was a flip engagement. But what I think is my biggest takeaway from that training is you realize you have access to a new way of viewing the world, and you have access to a new system that we thought were two systems. Like, we used to think of the mind and body as separate things, and you realize they're so interconnected. Mm-hmm. And one of the concepts you took us really deep into, and I think it was in the first day, was this idea of the pit. Mm-hmm. And you can update this and correct me if I get this wrong.
Right.
A year and a half. And it was like, the pit is anything that isn't a life enhancing thought.
Yeah.
And you realize you spend, when me and this other woman came to you for training, we realized we spend a lot of this time there. And I used to think I was someone who just thought positive. But what I realized is I was pushing down a lot of these big emotions, feelings, and thoughts. Yeah. And what I realized is, doing that, I was stuck in some unhelpful thought processes. And I think the biggest thing too was realizing that in our brains, when we first get sick, we form these neural pathways. And I remember you talking about them like a road. They start off like as a dirt road. And when we first get sick, our brains go, oh, you're sick. These symptoms are going to help you. Mm-hmm. But then what happens is sometimes you can get stuck in these subconscious dirt roads of symptoms and doing symptoms. And then you start to walk and tread that road. It's a bit like a sheep walking on a farm, and these roads become really well worn, and then they become so ingrained. And what I realized for me is I was doing a lot of those thoughts of in the pit, the things that weren't life enhancing, with the symptoms. And so then my body was remembering, symptoms from a past time, maybe when I had glange. It's going to be really helpful if I give you these symptoms, but actually that wasn't. And that sounds really hard to explain. So maybe you're going to be able to make that a little bit crisper.
I mean, the thing is that everyone takes, when I first started doing this work, I was like, I'll say something and everyone will take it in the same way, but everyone takes different analogies. Everyone hears it different. But we're all kind of talking about the same thing. So you are right. We have neurology. So the first thing that you're kind of talking about is that awareness that our mind and our body are connected. Because so often we are approaching, healing physical symptoms from a purely physical place. We go to the doctor, we go to the specialist. We're not taught that our emotions and our traumas and the way we approach life has an impact on our physical body. It is becoming more mainstream now, but, most of us aren't really shown that way of life. And it's the same with our mental health. If we're looking at how we can improve our mental health, we want to also use our body. So that's the first awareness. The second thing is that symptoms actually were there for a reason. And that's kind of what you're saying. I truly believe that symptoms come to wake us up to think, act, or be different. Because it's almost like our body reaches this load, stress response. It's like too many things on a bridge until it collapses. And then that's when we get sick. When we get sick, that causes a lot of stress, a stress response in the body. then the brain pathways start firing, because being sick, having these random symptoms and no one can help us, no one knows what to do, that is a really scary experience. And of course, we're going to be thinking about the symptoms a lot. We're going to be getting into more fear. And over time, those pathways, neural pathways, become stronger, like a dirt road turning into a highway. After a while, they just become super fast. So yeah, knowing that, remember we use the term an upside down genius, knowing that there were some patterns that your brain and your body had become really good at, but this was completely not Francie's fault. This was completely unconscious. And essentially it's like her mind and her body had gone in to protect her. And that's, we work by getting the mind and body unstuck by a few different things, but starting to retrain some of these neural pathways, these brain pathways, so that we can signal different messages to the body.
I think it's such a good explanation. And it reminds me now that, as people, we aren't always our behaviors. We aren't always our emotions, or we aren't always our sickness.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's very easy when you have a chronic illness or a long-term illness to feel like you are this, you are that, and realizing that we are not these things, and our bodies are actually perfect. We were born perfect. Our bodies, like you talk about that bridge, we know how to be balanced.
Mm-hmm.
And because, our brains are so smart, sometimes they, as you say, they become that genius. So we become an upside down genius. And I forgot about that concept. One of the things you taught us, Bianca, that, and I remember I still take this away, and I kind of still use this with my own clients now, is that when we say, like, I have chronic fatigue, I remember I used to wake up in the morning and be like, I am so tired, I have chronic fatigue. What I was subconsciously saying to myself is, I am that. And that was my day. Of course it was my day, because I am fatigued. Well, that was my identity for the day, right?
Yeah, because our identity statements, what we say, what language we use, our body follows through with like a puppet on a string. So most of us aren't aware of how much our language actually impacts our physiology. So when we say those identity statements, it means that our brain, if we say, I have chronic fatigue, there's no option, there's no room for our brain to look for any other evidence, no room to find any energy or to find any trust in the body. So yeah, even just that shift of, this is a process that's happening in my body. These are symptoms that are occurring in my body. They are not who I am at the fundamental level. They are something that's going on within me. And my body is always trying to return to what we call homeostasis, which is balance. When we have that mindset shift, it's huge.
It's so huge. And I see this now with my clients as well. I think we don't even have to use it in physiology. It can go right back to also thinking about our emotions. Because when we get upset or frustrated, we often say, I am frustrated, and we let that embody us, but we forget emotions are like weather, that they come and they go.
Yeah.
Emotions got motion in it, right? In that word. And that even simply by saying, like, I am feeling this.
Yeah.
I think the power of that language is so subtle and so impactful. Again, it sounds so woo-woo, but I really believe it's just so interconnected. And that's when you start to realize you have so much
influence.
Influence. That's a good word. I was going to look for the control, but it's not a good one. You have so much influence over your physiology. Doesn't mean you have influence over everything.
No. But
you can have the choice in simple day-to-day things like emotions right through to your physiology and how you feel.
Absolutely. And I know that, like, with the lightning process, what a lot of people find is the first time they've really opened up space. Because what we're doing with the tools is we're starting to interrupt some of these habitual unconscious patterns. So you're opening up room to make a new choice. And for most people, we've just been operating with the same thoughts, which leads to the same responses in our physiology, in our body. So this is how we start to make change. We're interrupting patterns that are no longer serving us. So you've had a bit of time to, like, integrate the tools. Actually, no, I just want to touch on one thing. You talked about emotions, and I know that when we were in the training, we had enough space because there was only 3 of us there to really go into some deeper stuff, and the way that we, like you said, do we actually even feel our emotions? Do we actually acknowledge things, or are we constantly running away? What is our relationship to our emotions? Because I think sometimes people assume brain retraining is all about positive thinking and it's all about getting into the best positive state, but that's not necessarily true, because the pit, which Francie referred to earlier, that's about thoughts that aren't life enhancing. And there's a difference between crying or getting angry or feeling upset about something and feeling it and letting it move through you, or just spending a little bit of time with it and actually allowing that to come in, versus being in that consistently. So we talked quite a bit about that, didn't we? Did you have any kind of reflections on that point?
I think this was like, if you think about a training or a course, you walk away with an aha moment or an awareness around you. And this was my key aha moment. So I'm just going to take you right back, because I think it's useful context for everyone, that in 2016, so I was in New Zealand, Coxon, went to the Rare Olympics. So I'd come from a very...
Oh, you just dropped that in there. So
yeah, I just dropped that in there. I don't want to like put it on a billboard and drive past it. So anyway, why I say that is, and maybe a lot of clients or people listening to this might not be an Olympian, but you'll be able to associate with what I'm going to say now, that I am, and I still very much am, I would say, a very driven, determined woman. I love to make things happen. I love to challenge the status quo. And I'd come from this high-performing sports environment where I got myself in this state that after any race, after any training, I would always dig really deep on myself. Where did I go wrong? What were my mistakes? And spend quite a bit of time analyzing that, I guess beating myself up and telling myself where I wasn't good enough. And for me, that really served me at the time, because it allowed me to continually improve. And then once I left high-performing sport and then went into my career, I was actually working as a workplace coach. I continued that. So after a workshop, I would look at the feedback, and 90% of it could be positive, Bianca. I'd ignore that 90%, and that's our brain's negative default bias, right?
Yeah.
So I was looking at what I wasn't doing well, and I was podcasting stuff, I was reading books, I was doing courses. But what I actually hadn't realized until we did the lightning process together is that my behavior was perfectionism. And I'd never associated that with perfectionism. I thought perfectionism was someone who had a really tidy house, wrote really tidy, dressed really nicely. That's just not me. So I was like, I'm not a perfectionist.
I fully relate to that.
But what I realized was having such a high expectation of myself that I was stuck, I guess, in this pit thinking of feeling like I was never enough, or I was never doing enough, or I was never worthy of enough. And I used to be someone who could never take a break or rest because I wasn't ever enough. And that was the biggest thing for me, that realizing, oh my gosh, I'm actually a perfectionist. No one tells you that's perfection what it is. And I think that was the biggest thing for me, is taking that away and going, oh my gosh, this constant drive to continually be better, you can do it differently. You can do it from a place of balance. You can do it from a place of taking the lessons but not beating yourself up. And that's where I think I call it toxic positivity, but this think positive, think yourself out of it, is you don't actually accept that these things that you're telling yourself aren't good enough are there, and you just push them down. But whatever we resist, you end up persisting. I say that, and I think I was just in that persistent perfectionism. And maybe a lot of your clients, or people listening to this, will be able to resonate and go, oh my gosh, maybe I am actually a little bit perfectionist without realizing it.
Well, the thing is that, I believe that a level of we say doing on it for training, of a high standard is useful. So an Olympian, of course, you need to be constantly reaching the next level. And that is probably a internal dialogue that's going on in your own head, plus it's being put on you by different people in the sport and in the whole field. Where was I going with this? But the point where it starts impacting our health is when it's no longer useful, when it becomes habitual and it's the only way we're showing up. So yeah, I fully appreciate you saying that, because I think most people can relate. We live in a world now where we are go, go, go. We see curated images of everyone else's lives. And I think there is this tendency to think, put that pressure on ourselves to do better. And we won't be happy until we won't feel joy until we've got this house. We won't, all of these things that are just so damaging to the way we show up in life. It is definitely a pattern I see a lot with my clients. It's definitely one I've had to work on myself. I've come so far with it, but it does still sneak up in funny ways, getting on social media, even starting this podcast, getting out of perfectionism. We really need to look at the way we're speaking to ourselves and how compassionate we are with ourselves. Because if we're doing, I just want to keep reverting to doing because you're an LP client, but if we are doing perfectionism, we're going to have a really self-critical voice in our head consistently, and that causes a stress response in our body. Our body does not know the difference between running from a tiger or our own negative critical thoughts. It still produces the same thing. So not only is there that, but we're also missing all of our body's cues to rest, because we are constantly having this internal feeling that we need to do more and more and more because we're not preserving. And often that belief in itself can, start from a long time ago, but that's not as important. We do a bit of work around that in the lightning process as well. If people have things from the past that they know are sort of anchoring them to the past that we need to shift. Yeah, no, thank you for sharing, because I think that high achieving perfectionism, that one is huge, and that is a pattern that sort of maintains the stress response in the body for sure. So anyway, I haven't really even asked about your energy levels. So did you use the tools, because you use the tools consistently after the training? So it looks like people would go home on day 3 and then they're putting these tools into play. These tools take anywhere between 30 seconds and a few minutes. It's different each time. And how long did it take before you started seeing shifts? And how long was it before you got into equilibrium, until your body returned to homeostasis, had some energy again?
I feel like I was one of those ones who walked off and I was going to be well. This is a memory I have on the second night of the training. I went out to see my cousins for dinner.
Yeah.
And normally if I would do that, Bianca, I would have, I'm going out for dinner at their house. This is because I wasn't well. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be tired the next day. That was the pit. And that was the pit in the past. And that was the story I was telling myself, which became my reality. And my body was hearing that like a well-driven highway and going, cool. However, on that second night, I remember I used these tools and was like, I have a choice. I don't have to go down that motorway anymore. I can actually build a new road out to the side that's going to look like life enhancing and health. And I remember using the tools we did and going out to dinner and feeling really good the next day. So it was almost instant. And it took work and it took retraining. But I remember that as sort of a first signal that things were on the right track. And before I came with you with the lightning process, I could walk about 2K, maybe. And then 8 weeks later, I ran a half marathon, which it sounds so crazy. And I didn't run it exceptionally fast. I took my high performing perfectionism to the side. I was like, oh, I'm going to redefine what success is in this half marathon. That is, I'm turning up, I'm having fun, I'm going to keep running. And me and my friend talked the whole way, and it was a really great time. But what I found is you can get results really fast, but like anything with the lightning process, I would say what you put in is what you get out. And it's like going to the gym. If you want to train your biceps, if you want to train your quads, the more effort you put in, the faster you're going to see those results. And the thing about the lightning process is it doesn't have to be, you don't have to work hard. It's about working smart and noticing where are those opportunities to rebuild that new motorway? Where are those opportunities to get off and drive your vehicle in a different direction? And I think that comes back to the power of that. It's all about choice. You have the choice to find freedom in your body if you choose.
Yeah, and it's the most empowering thing to learn tools that you can apply yourself. You are the one who got stuck, so you are the one to get your help.
And you don't have to wait to go to the doctor or wait for a script. You can just implement it in your life.
You are resetting your neurology and your physiology in moments throughout the day, and then you're signaling safety back into the nervous system. Can return to this balance. That is what we're doing. And yeah, I mean, for some people, I asked you that question about how long did it take. I do remember you had quite fast changes, because for some people, they walk off and they're like, yeah, I'm going to be well. You know, they've turned that corner, they've shifted their beliefs, they've seen that they understand now chronic illness and neurology and physiology. And then it still means that they're applying these tools weeks and months to come, because we're kind of integrating these tools into our life. We're going to the gym, we've got the gym plan, but we're now using the tools to build that muscle, because the brain is like a muscle. So you're still using the tools. For others, it's a bit of a slower process. It can take weeks or maybe a month, but it doesn't really matter, because like Francie said, it's all about consistency. And when we're being consistent, when we have the belief, the brain changes. That is neuroplasticity. The brain has to change. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. So, oh gosh, we could talk for ages, right? But I'll keep moving. So my next question, as we kind of head sort of towards the end, is thinking about people listening. Maybe some people don't have chronic illness, they're just curious. Maybe they are dealing with some symptoms. What advice would you tell your younger self?
Oh, I love this question. What advice I'd give my younger self? So I know as someone I'm always going to, or I choose to be a determined person. I choose to be a high performing person, and I don't want to, and I choose to say that I love it. I love what that comes. I love success. But what I would say to my younger self is there's sort of an old way and a new way to achieve success and do productivity. I would say that old way is what we kind of hold up, and we're taught that unless you're being busy, you're lazy, you're wasting your time, and that unless you're continually improving, you are missing those opportunities. Or unless you're saying yes to everything, you're letting opportunities go by. So I say that's kind of how we were taught to do success. Mm-hmm. What I would say now, I would say to my younger self, is there's a new way to do productivity. And I always fundamentally believe that it's about thinking about, well, what does your definition of success look like for you? Because we don't stop and think about what success is for us in our lives. We have no option but to borrow other people's. And that could be borrowing a little bit of everybody else's. So, of course, we're never good enough, because we're trying to be all these different things or be all these different people. And when you know what your definition of success is, I would say fundamentally we put in there this new way of doing productivity, which is realizing rest isn't a reward. You don't achieve your goals and give yourself rest. Yep. Rest is a right. And that by doing productivity this new way, you can be intuitive with your body. You can take those breaks when you need it, and that you are more productive, you are more creative, you have access to different thoughts and processes by realizing to take rest. And I'd say that's, for my younger self, they are the two biggest things, is realizing, think about what success means to you, and realizing we can do productivity in a new way. And I think it's not surprising that we're in this world now where we're seeing a lot more autoimmune, we're seeing a lot more chronic illness, because we have swung the pendulum too far on old productivity, whereas new productivity is about finding intuition. It's about knowing what success is for you, and it's about having an impact that's really aligned, Bianca.
Yes, Francie. Yes. I mean, there's so many conversations from that. First of all, I feel like this is a whole other topic of conversation. It was maybe another day. As females, I think we need to honor our cycles. I think we need to honor our femininity. And I'm not saying we can't be determined, but yeah, we need to make it in a way that works for us. As I'm sure you'll be learning on this journey too, as we all are, because so many of us, well, everyone, I should say, has these beliefs and has this model of what success means from our childhood. Mm. A lot of us haven't stopped to really question, is this truly what I want to be doing? Is this truly how I want to be operating? And for those of us that have had these ongoing chronic symptoms, it's often a blessing. And I know it's hard to hear sometimes, and, it may not resonate with everyone, but it can be a blessing, because it's like we have worked so hard. The only thing that's going to stop us from being, from pushing from this place that is unsustainable is getting chronic symptoms. I'm so grateful for my body for screaming out to me, because I wouldn't have stopped. I've changed my relationship with that too. And one thing I want to say on that is, in recent years for me, something that's been really eye-opening, because I've been going through my own grief journey, which is you're living in a state of chronic stress. It's really unavoidable for a while. I also got a little bit caught up into I have to be pushing, because I've been independent. I have to keep going. No one else is paying the bills. No one else is doing the work for me. So it's very easy to slip into that. But the more we can really make that choice, we can open up and think, right, what do I need to give back to me first? What are my choices in the way that I approach this? Mm-hmm. Because we cannot give, and we cannot be in a place, we cannot sustain giving or operating when we are burning it. It's as simple as that. So what does success mean to you? How do you want to approach life? Do you want to be keeping up with everyone else and not even questioning what success means to you? I definitely don't. I don't really give a fuck about what anyone else is doing. But that has taken me a long time to get there. A long time.
It takes a long time. And why it takes a long time is because right from back at primary school, we celebrate kids who are top of the class. They get the achievement awards. Maybe it's changed from since we knew at our primary school, everyone gets a participation award. Yeah. But I don't know. But they're the kids who get trophies. So we learn, I am worthy. People are going to celebrate me. People are going to love me when I achieve something. Mm-hmm. And I think it's about realizing that our self-worth is already here. We matter already. We are already deserving of all of these things that, and rest is one of those things. And that if we want to show up and be the best version of ourselves every day, and we want to have impact, and we want to have meaningful success, we need to do it from a place that we fill our own cup up. And I think one of the key things I've taken away from the lightning process is realizing that, our nervous system needs space to get out of these fight, flight, and freeze, to get out of the everyday stresses, that it's not actually a tiger, it's just my boss is being a bitch, and I need to step away from it. And I have learned, I do things now, I journal every morning. Mm-hmm. Yin yoga is my favorite practice. Mm-hmm. And I have a cup of tea now. I've also been on a bit of grief process this year as well. I had one day, yin yoga. I cried the whole way through it, because you hold a lot of your emotion in your hips. Yeah. And I got to the end of it. I was like, oh my God, to my teacher, I've just cried. She's like, this is beautiful. Mm-hmm. You needed that. And you realize that your nervous system needs these opportunities to find space. And like you were talking about before, I now look at my symptoms as a gift from my body. In the past, my symptoms were there, and I remember having these symptoms of hot sweats and hot flushes and feeling really tight. But in my mind, that was I needed to push harder. So I'd go to a Les Mills yoga class. Not yoga, like a Les Mills pump class, which was probably the worst thing I could have done. But I told myself that was a good idea. Whereas now I'm like, oh, thank you, body. That's a symptom. Time to create space with yin, with journaling, with puppy play.
Yeah.
Very big napper these days, because I know if I create that space, I am going to be more productive. I am going to be more sustainable. I am going to be more successful. And that's like, it's all about doing productivity the new way. That's what I think it's like. It's working smart, not hard. And it's, we need to be like, I don't know what it is. We're creating a revolution.
You guys are listening and you want to join our team, you want to stay on board. No, that's such an amazing message. And I think, this is why I actually wanted to do the podcast. But I actually feel like most of us are feeling the same way. And we just need to really speak on these things. So kind of as we wrap up, I first of all, two things. I want you to share with anyone that's thinking about doing brain retraining or any mind-body work. What would you say to them? And second thing, I want to know a little bit about where you're at in life now, because I know you got some really exciting things in the pipeline. So share that.
I would say with anyone who's considering doing brain retraining, as I said, for me, it was better than getting engaged because I got my health back. I would say be curious. It's very easy to be judgmental of these brain body connection retraining and judge these things and look for reasons why it won't work. What I would say is be curious. Look for things where it might work. Look for things you don't believe, and go to someone who is a trainer and be curious about, like, hey, I have these beliefs. How true is that? Where can you update my thinking? And I would say bring curiosity, not judgment, because if you need proof that you can be healthy again, I'm proof, and so is the other awesome lady in my course. And I think I've referred a cousin with long COVID who's now living healthy again, another person with long COVID who was a businesswoman who's got her life back. So be curious. I would say that's the first thing. And I would say even if your medical practitioner finds reasons to say no, that's okay. They might not have this information and data that you have access to. And that's okay too. We can respect where people are and the training they've had and the information and the knowledge they have. I was just blessed to have a beautiful doctor who understood that. So I think just that's okay. We sometimes just need to accept people might not have access to it, but it is your body.
Yeah.
And
make
you own it.
empowering decisions for your body.
Make empowering decisions.
And sometimes you really just have to say fuck it to other people's opinions, because you do know your body best, and it might be scary. Like Francie said, I was skeptical before I came to brain retraining. I had to talk to someone that had this exact, no one has the exact same symptoms, but it's the same condition. I am that person that if you want to have a free chat and just ask me questions, fire me challenging questions, I will give you an honest opinion and I will help you understand the science. So, thank you, Francie, so much. And, tell us about where you're at in your life.
Yeah, so life's exciting. So a couple of things. I think first thing is, so now I'm married. Life's great. We're also having a baby, which is also very exciting. And I think
so exciting.
The LP definitely helped me. People might think, oh my gosh, Francie, now you're going down a different world, but it just taught me to trust my body again.
Yeah.
What is probably more exciting than that now is, I was working as a coach for a while, then I took the LP and I realized, oh my gosh, you can probably hear it in my voice. I am so passionate about helping determine what a woman achieve success, achieve their goals in a different way, not in a way where we're living from a fear of failure, not in a way where we feel like if I take a break, I am guilty. My to-do list kind of drives me. So now I help women achieve success differently, doing it in this new way, doing it from a place of lightness, doing it with confidence, doing it in a place from self-worth. And I've just released a brand new coaching program, which is all about helping people starting to define success and realizing you can achieve everything you want in this world and still embrace our feminine energy and still embrace our confidence and still embrace rest and be more productive. So this is a really exciting journey. I took the leap out of full-time business, which I know is scary, but I know in my heart there's just so much opportunity for women out there that you can step into this space before you end up like me doing chronic fatigue. You can step into this space before you get chronic illness by working smart, not hard.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing, Francie. And so the types of people you're working with, obviously people like we kind of talked about, people that resonate with that high achieving, go, 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 push mentality, you struggle with perfectionism and that kind of thing. And yeah, I think it's awesome you're doing that kind of work. Like you've taken the step to further get into your coaching, to trust yourself. As we know, when we get that niggle to do anything, it's really scary to make that jump, especially out of full-time work. But I'm a firm believer of we know intuitively what we're here to do, I believe. And if we start following little glimmers of what lights us up, then we are always on the right path. So yeah, where can people find you if they want to work with you? Are you taking clients at the moment? Is it online and just in Auckland?
Yes, so I'm on all socials. I have one place that's probably be a really good place to jump in to start is my She Thrives Collective, which is a closed Facebook group where I share daily tips, weekly trainings on it. So that's a really good place just to hang out, get to know me, see if what I share resonates. So yeah, you can find Flourish and free coaching on all socials. So I'm based in Auckland, but I do my coaching online, and I am taking, yes, I'm pregnant, but I am taking clients at the moment for the next 3 months.
Nice. Awesome.
But I wanted to just talk on, there was something you just said before that, and I think it's really important that I think for any of us women, it doesn't matter how successful we become in our life, we often think we shouldn't feel fear or we shouldn't feel self-doubt. And I remember we talked about this the other day, Bianca, that that's a very normal part of something we feel. And that's okay. Like rather than being in the pit and beating ourselves up for that, what I realize is we're never going to have the answers. We're never going to remove self-doubt. But it's a matter of asking ourselves, what is the next right step? And I think if you're sitting here feeling symptoms or doing symptoms, the next right step might be reaching out to Bianca or reaching out to me or someone else who's doing it. Like you don't have to have all the answers. You might have doubt, but just take that first step. Or you're thinking, oh, maybe I'm someone who's go, 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 and I've got to push, push, push all the time. And it's just going to be a phase. And by next year, it'll be over. What I'd say is those thoughts and mindset are always there. I thought it was just a phase until I got sick. So it's not about doubting it and saying it's not for me. I think it's about being curious and saying, well, what is the one next right step I could take to empower myself, whatever stage I'm at in my life?
Yeah, 100%. And that is the thing. I think sometimes stepping into being self-employed and things, I think sometimes people think, oh, it might be easy for them or different opinions, and that's fine. But yes, we have the tools where we can regulate our state and we can change our beliefs about it. But it's also acknowledging, fear and uncertainty is everyone goes through it. And like Francie said, the thing that's helped me the most is just taking what is one step, what is that next thing I can do, trying to tune out of what everyone else is doing, which I know we can all fall in getting caught up in, but just one step at a time and you will get change. So yeah, I really hope that this conversation has sparked you. If you are curious, I hope that you found some inspiration in Francie's incredible healing story. And I'm just so grateful. I mean, I don't know if I don't speak on this much, but I'm so grateful for the people I come across, because I always feel like it's so easy to connect people, and just to be able to actually, and Francie will know this now too with her work, to be able to give people tools to actually empower themselves. Like I'm not doing anything. I am teaching people how to heal themselves. That is the most powerful concept, I believe, knowing that we have that power and influence within us. So, thank you, Francie, so much for coming on. Obviously, I talked a lot about the lightning process on this call, and if you are curious, if you want to get in touch, you're more than welcome to book a free appointment. You can find my Calendly link in my Instagram bio. Otherwise, please just reach out. I'd love to hear from you, and I'd love questions and any takeaways that anyone's got from this.
All right. Thanks, Bianca.
Thanks for listening, guys. Tune in for next week's episode. See you next week.